Azure Sentinel Threat Intelligence Quick Start. Well, what is Microsoft Sentinel Threat Intelligence? Well, Microsoft's Threat Intelligence imports threat indicators like all other event data by using connectors. The two types of Sentinel connectors for threat intelligence are the Threat Intelligence Taxi connector and, of course, the Threat Intelligence platforms. Now, one of the best free threat intelligence platforms out there and indicators is Pulsedive. Go ahead, search Pulsedive on the internet, create the account for free. It's absolutely amazing, both for the community and for business. So they have a community version, which is free, and then they have a business versions for enterprise. Pulsedive ingests millions of IPs, domains, URLs collected from dozens of feeds and user submissions worldwide. And with its user community actively submitting new IOCs every day, Pulsedive has data that no one else has. Every indicator is scanned and enriched by Pulsedive, and the result is a wealth of real-time contextual information. Users can perform active or passive scans on the IOCs without submitting them to Pulsedive databases, which again is fantastic for learning and also fantastic for businesses who don't want to share that IOC information. Now, what is a threat intelligence or Taxi connector? Well, Microsoft Threat Sentinel integrates with Taxi 2.0 and 2.1 data sources to enable monitoring and alerting and hunting using various threat intelligence. Use this connector to send threat indicators from Taxi servers to Microsoft Sentinel. These threat indicators can include IP addresses, domains, URLs, and file hashes. Many organizations use threat intelligence platforms or TPI solutions to aggregate the threat indicator feeds from various sources. As you can see here, we've got a Pulse TIP or custom Taxi solution. It gets uploaded to the API indicator and then gets ingested into Sentinel. So very, very awesome feature to have, and I recommend if you are not using it, go and use it in your Sentinel environment. Again, the forms of threat intelligence and the forms of threats out there. We have observed data, we have threat actors, we've got malware, vulnerabilities, attack patterns, identities, and campaigns. But more importantly, we need to have a platform where we can manage everything with a single pane of glass. And that's where Sentinel comes in. Sentinel allows us to do our operational, our strategic, our tactical, and our technical support, as well as the well-being of our company. So this is just giving you, like I say, that 20,000 foot overview of what forms of threat intelligence is out there. And then you may hear the term threat hunting, and we're just going to touch briefly on it. What is threat hunting? Well, threat hunting is the practice of proactively searching for cybersecurity threats that are lurking undetected in your environment. Instead of relying on your analytical rules in Sentinel, you additionally hunt for threats via the KQL queries or the Kusto querying language. And of course, there are two types of threat hunting models. We have intelligent-based hunting, which utilizes IOCs, hash values, IP addresses, domain names, and host artifacts. And then we also have the hypothesis-based hunting. And these hunts are done on IOAs and TTPs of adversaries. So it's just giving you a brief overview of what threat hunting is. So when someone talks about threat hunting, you're not going to sit there and nod your head and think, okay, I know what they're talking about. But meanwhile, you shake your head and say, well, I have no idea what they're talking about. So that completed, what we're going to do in our lab, we're going to go ahead and deploy the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Data Taxi connector. We're then going to use Pulsedive and connect that threat intelligence connector to Pulsedive so that we can start ingesting data and getting to learn how to use these various connectors in Microsoft Azure Sentinel. So I'd like to thank you for viewing, and I look forward to seeing you in the lab. Hi, and welcome back to this lab. In this lab, we are going to install the Microsoft Threat Intelligence connector into Sentinel. As you can see, I've logged onto the portal. I'm going to navigate to Microsoft Sentinel in my menu. I'm going to click on my Sentinel workspace. I'm just going to close this window to expand our real estate. I'm going to scroll down underneath Content Management. I'm going to select Content Hub. And in the Content Hub, I'm going to go ahead and type in threat and press enter. And as you can see, this will bring up everything related to my threat connectors. I'm going to select the Microsoft Threat Intelligence connector. And if we scroll down, you can see we're getting 38 analytic rules, 4 data connectors, 5 hunting queries, and 1 workbook. This is a fantastic solution, and it's free. So I'm going to go ahead and click install. And this is going to go away and install that threat connector. And that can take about anywhere from a few seconds to about a minute or two for that connector to install. Once that connector is installed, we will go and configure it. So let's just wait for the installation to complete. As you can see from the notifications icon, our installation was completed successfully. So I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I'm going to come down again to my data connectors. And you can see on my data connectors over here, I have 2 connected data connectors, but threat intelligence is not connected. So we need to go ahead and connect our threat intelligence. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that to open up that connector. And I'm going to click Open Connector Page. Now, this is going to ask us for a taxi server. It's going to ask us for a bit of information. And where do we get all this information? Well, we get this from our taxi threat intelligence servers. Now, one of the best ones out there, and it's absolutely free and I highly recommend it, is Pulsedive. Pulsedive is absolutely amazing. Don't worry about my API key. I will rotate this. But this is where we can go and get stuff set up. And I'm going to show you how to do that. You can sign into Pulsedive for free and actually create your free account. And then once you've created your free account, we can go through and we'll grab some of this Pulsedive test data here. And we will need these collection ID keys and of course our Pulsedive API key in order to get stuff working. So let's bounce back into Sentinel quickly. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to give it a friendly name. I'm going to call it Pulsedive. Now I need to put that root URL key in there. I need to put in my collection ID, my username, and my password. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my root API link, and I'm just going to paste that link in there. And as you can see there, it's pulsedive.com taxi2 API. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that collections ID. And that collections ID is what we're going to grab from here. This is the test data. We don't want to use these other two. We want to grab the bottom one. So I'm going to click copy. And then I'm going to bounce back into here. I'm going to click in there and paste in that key. I'm going to use the name taxi2. And now my password is my API key for my account. So I'm going to scroll all the way back to my account. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to copy my API key. I'm going to paste my new API key in there. And I'm going to go ahead and click add. And that's going to go ahead and add that taxi server to Sentinel. And this can take a few minutes to add. And as you can see, it was added successfully. And if I scroll down, you can now see I have this taxi server showing up here. And we just need to give it a bit of time for that taxi server to generate data. So if I bounce back into my Microsoft Sentinel, we go back to our workspace and I come back into my data connectors, you will now see very shortly that that data connector for threat intelligence has now been connected, and you can see it's turned green. So that's how you set up a threat intelligence connector with Pulsedive. And again, I recommend Pulsedive. It's free, it's great for learning, and even for businesses. So that concludes this training lab, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lab.